This is the Begin Within podcast, where we believe real, lasting health and fitness requires you to start inside before you work out. I'm your host, Nate Slegger, and I'm here to show you behind the scenes of fitness. You already know exercise is good for you, but what about all the other things in life that affect your fitness? If you're looking for extra motivation to get started or to make sure you keep going, this is the place for you.
Produced by BeginWithin.fit.
Improving health is about so much more than just losing weight. But I realize weight loss might be the goal that brought you here to the Begin Within podcast. That's why I wrote my latest book, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss, to reveal the 5 areas that I see are most overlooked by the people that I work with who want to lose weight. Each one of the chapters in this free ebook describes that specific area that you need to focus on to improve your health and get great permanent results. And it also links back here to episodes of the podcast where we've had experts on the show talking about that specific area. So you can benefit from those previous episodes while you're learning about how to maximize the results that you're after. You can get your free copy of my ebook, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss, by going to beginwithin.fit/ebook or going to the link in the show notes. Now is a great time to do a little multitasking while you're listening to the start of this episode. Head over to grab your free copy of my book, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss. If you missed the URL, here it is again, beginwithin.fit/ebook. Or there is a link in the show notes for you. Grab your copy, and now let's get on with today's episode. My guest today is Adam Hart. He's a leading expert in nervous system regulation. And even though we haven't talked a ton about that here on the Begin Within Health Show, that is a huge part of getting what we want out of our brains and out of ourselves in terms of making the decisions that we want to make in order to get the results that we want. So my conversation with Adam today is really going to benefit you. It benefited me big time when I did the interview. I just absolutely loved the information that he shared and teaches some of the concepts, some of the techniques that he shares with his clients, whatever result that they might want in their life. Of course, we're here to improve our physical health, right? That's why we come to this podcast. But whatever result we want differently in our lives, especially if there's a case where we're making less healthy decisions than what we'd like to make, what Adam has to share is going to help so much. So I will just get into the interview here without taking any more of your time. You're going to benefit so much from this conversation that I had with Adam Hart. Please enjoy.
I think right from a young age, I got disconnected from feeling my own emotions. If I point at any one real specific thing, for sure, it was my relationship with my dad, where there wasn't a lot of loving connection. And I think there was some pain that I went through in that experience where I didn't want to feel hurt. And so I numbed myself to my emotions from a young age. And that perpetuated in terms of how I started to behave and how I started to escape. And for me, my main way of escaping was through food, and particularly sugar.
Okay.
I was diagnosed ADHD in my teens, told I was learning disabled. And that was, another big source of emotional stress that I didn't know how to separate myself from. And that's where all the, a lot of self-worth and self-esteem thoughts came in and, perpetuated that addiction to sugar and screens is another big one where I would just kind of lose myself in movies and trying not to feel too deeply into my heart, knowing it was suffering. And that kind of led into the adulthood experience. And then all of a sudden, here I am now in my 20s, and I'm still suffering with a lot of that self-worth and self-esteem lack of connection to feeling happy and fulfilled. And now the escaping, it starts to elevate, still heavily in relation to food, but now all of a sudden alcohol starts to enter the scene, and just other ways of being impulsive in my behavior, and not really feeling like I was living anywhere close to some sort of alignment to purpose or passion. And it
Mm.
got to where I was pre-diabetic and overweight, and suffering with ADHD and suffering with anxiety and depression. And that's when I kind of went into this whole process of, well, I got to figure out a solution to this, because I'm 25 years old and I'm on several different medications. Nothing I'm turning to is helping. Every diet I ever went on, I felt more guilty. Every fitness program I committed to, I felt more frustrated with my self-worth, because I just couldn't stick to making anything work.
Mm.
Then I discovered rock climbing. And at that moment, this was my occupational burnout moment, where I was done. Like I had to surrender everything to what else would be possible in that moment, because I had no solutions. Again, everything I ever heard or was told was to get on more medication, another program that just never worked for me.
Yeah.
And then when I found climbing, indoor rock climbing, it changed everything, because it was the first time I could feel peace in my life. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm climbing indoors. This is when I first climbing, this 25 years ago, and all of a sudden I'm so focused on just being present in the moment. That's the only way you can do that sport well, is you have to be there. You have to be in the moment. You can't be lost in your thought, or you
Mm.
don't move anywhere up the wall. But in the process of committing to climbing and realizing it was making me feel peaceful inside, it became an addiction. It became the newest addiction. But in terms of a healthier addiction, it was definitely healthier. But I didn't know any other way to feel that way inside. So I went all in on rock climbing.
Okay.
I changed my entire life to just be focused on this one sport. And I'm serious. Like I quit my job. I packed up. I moved out to the mountains of British Columbia, Canada, and I just immersed myself in a small community that was all based off of other folks who like to climb. And I started to train to become a rock climbing mountain guide. It's like, this is the only thing that makes me feel good. I'm just doing this. But in that process, I learned something about the human ability to stress. And this is kind of like the big message, especially for parents out there who know that they're overwhelmed and they have a lot of daily things that they have to show up for, and they feel like they're always needing to push through and push through and push through. And they too, like I once was, have to rely on all these different things that you have to fit into your busy life to get some energy back. There's another way to do it. And it's not about fitting things in, it's about optimizing the relationship between how your mind operates and your nervous system operates in the moments of your life that you're being triggered. Climbing taught me that I can regulate myself. Climbing taught me that I can regulate my stress response in the moments of life I'm feeling stressed. The first place I took that was to my sugar addiction. So I said, okay, wow, fight or flight is such a beautiful stress response that we have, but most of us don't realize that we have become locked in it. And we don't even know that that's how we feel most of our days, is we're just going from reaction to reaction to reaction to reaction. When you don't put yourself in a real situation of fight or flight, you won't even know that that's where you are, because you haven't been put in a scenario where you have to reset it.
Mm.
Climbing is real fight or flight. And so I would spend years, days and days and days, hours and hours a day for years, training my nervous system to be in a regulated state. And so there's two forms of your nervous system, and this is the autonomic. So autonomic nervous system, it's happening automatically in the background. You have your fight or flight, the sympathetic, or you have your rest and digest, the parasympathetic. Both have very different experiences for us to really embrace. If you don't know the difference, you will not know the difference in terms of how you get to feel every day. But it requires us in modern society to train ourselves back into the parasympathetic, back into what does it feel like to actually live with an overflow of daily recovery, an overflow of daily energy, an overflow of daily focus and motivation. And it doesn't come from the next fad diet you choose to go on. It comes from how you are interacting with your own brain's relationship with the moments of life, using life as your classroom, using life as your playground, not how do I squeeze in another run around the block so I have more energy? Well, then you come home and your kids are freaking out, and then you get triggered to your kids. It doesn't matter how much running you did, you're back into an inflamed state. How do you use your kids as your training ground? How do you use your work experience as your training ground? How do you utilize your desire to have more fitness as a training ground for optimizing the way your brain and nervous system are relating to these things in your life?
Mm.
And the beauty of this is that it's extremely easy to optimize this, but it requires a real focused discipline, because your brain will not like the process. Because in the moments that your brain is wanting you to be reactive, that's when you do the work. And if
Mm.
you stop reacting to what your brain is telling you, so for example, when I first discovered this process and leaned into it in terms of my own reactive ways of being, sugar was my dominant one. And so I said, okay, well, yeah, if I can reset this while I'm actually climbing in extreme moments, and all of a sudden in that moment, I can use a very particular breath practice. I call it heart flow. It takes less than a minute to reset your own nervous system. What if I did the same practice when I'm having anxiety about sugar? I wonder if I can do the same thing then. And so immediately, all of a sudden, I realized, wow, I don't have to eliminate my sugar addiction. I just have to pause in the moment of my brain's desire to get me to grab the cookies, because that was my big one, cookies. And so I would just stand there at the cupboard with the cookies in my hand, and I would do this breath practice. I would practice heart flow, 33 seconds. Next thing I knew, I was back in my power. Reset my nervous system. I'm back in that calmer state. My brain is focused. I have more motivation, and I can still choose to eat the cookies if I want to. But just by being consistent with that practice, the cravings started to change. And I no longer was craving because I was no longer being reactive to the craving. My brain stopped using sugar as a source of energy.
Nice.
And it came from my ability to teach my brain to let go of the need for me to react to sugar.
Well, so can we? Would you be willing to explain the breath practice?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And this
First,
is definitely, I mean, for anyone who,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I want to go there. I before that, I have this like I'm very curious to know about the um what the transformation. How did it show up? Was it that you were setting the cookies down more easily, or not even wanting them in the first place, or was
Yeah.
it both?
Well, and that's the transition. At first, I still was locked into my brain's desire to get me to grab them, grab them, grab them, grab them.
Yeah.
The more that I just made the pause and had them in my hand, yeah, at some point, whether it was a week, a month, it happened very quickly, where all of a sudden the cravings were gone. Now, it's not perfect, and I still enjoy sugar, but I'm not a slave to the reactions that I once was with sugar, which was pretty drastic, hiding myself in the bathroom as a teen, just gobbling candy after candy after candy, and you know, just just loathing in my own self or lack of self worth.
Mm-hmm.
To know that this was all coming from my brain's the brain's love of adrenaline. Adrenaline is the number one source of energy for the brain in terms of the brain's survival mechanism. And we know adrenaline comes from your fight or flight response. And so if your brain learns that it can use those thoughts, particularly for me around sugar, it's not going to stop using those because it's a survival thought. It's like, hey, if I get Adam to trigger to sugar, I'm going to get the adrenaline I want, and also the dopamine, which is the voltage of the brain from the actual response, the neurotransmitter. So until I taught my brain that it didn't need to use sugar as a source of reactivity, there was no escape. There was no diet I was ever going to get on that was going to give me relief. my brain still knew that sugar was a trigger.
Hmm.
So the process
Wow.
was and is, and this is what I teach all my clients, is in the moment you're having the reactivity is when you need to train your brain to stop using that particular pattern as a source of reactivity. Otherwise, you'll never have a freedom from it. And so at first, it's just being okay with the fact that you're still being triggered by it, create the pause, have the freedom to still choose to consume or react. So another way that I work with parents on this is the same thing. If you know that you get angry with your child when they won't put on their clothes, when you're trying to leave for school and they're stuck, getting their shoes on for an hour and a half, that's your moment. Your brain has learned that you react to your child in that moment. It's going to try and get you to do that again and again and again. Doesn't mean you don't react. It just means in the moment, you have to notice what your brain is up to. You have a moment to create peace and presence around it, consciousness. And now you have a choice. You can choose to continue to react, or you can choose to shift into what else wants to be there as a replacement. Now, for me, when I did this and we're using sugar as an example, when I did this with sugar, so I gave myself the freedom to still eat it. Eventually, the craving stopped to where I remember the one time I was at the farmer's market when I first started to do this process, and I'm standing in line. I love the baked goods. Who doesn't like the baked goods at farmer's market, freshly baked croissants and all that stuff? And I'm standing in line, and all of a sudden I'm looking at the counter full of all the different baked goods. And I'm like, man, I'm just standing here out of habit, but I actually don't crave anything here. And I was so surprised. I still remember to this day, I was like in shock that I didn't crave to order one or two or three different things to gobble down. I walked away so empowered and recognizing that, wow, there's a way to work with our own daily energy that most of us have no clue is possible. And it all comes from nourishing the relationship between the brain and the nervous system in a way where the heart gets to lead how we show up. And that comes from training your vagus nerve. You have to train your nervous system to operate from this place. Because then anything you do after that, anything you add in a fitness program, you add in a new sleep pattern, then you're working from a brain that's optimized, not a brain that's looking for triggers to learn from, to then stress you out more about the thing you're trying to add in. It's a really bad approach.
Mm.
You work from the parasympathetic first, and you're going to have a much more happier, more fulfilled life.
Nice. I know I've seen, you gestured to that the heart spot on your chest is
Yeah.
letting the heart lead. Could you tell me about that a little bit? Like how does
Well,
that work?
yeah. And I think this, for a lot of us who have had experiences in childhood, which is a lot of, I mean, if we don't know how to manage the stress response to our childhood lives, and we don't have parents who know how to co-regulate that, we're in trouble. You will have elements of your own self-esteem, self-worth that you're still vibrationally and frequency based living through. And this is a disconnect from feeling your own emotions because it was painful in childhood. And so it's a survival mechanism that blocks off the ability for your heart to be what leads how you get to experience your life. And this is a biological experience. It's not me just saying words. Well, you want to add your heart into this. No, there's an actual biological way to bring your heart into the communication of how you experience your life. And it's done through your nervous system, and then specifically through the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that connects through the heart to the brain, so that you can actually communicate with what's called coherence, a clean channel of communication from your heart to your brain, so that it's not a cerebral experience. If everything that we do in life, which we live on average with 70,000 thoughts a day,
Mm.
it's a lot of thoughts. So if we're not bringing more consciousness to those thoughts, you are living in your head, and you know it because there's symptoms to that. And the symptoms are, and especially as parents, we're just overrun with things that have to get done, and we're constantly feeling like we need to push through. And there's just the elements of feeling like we're just a bit of a crazy person, just going from one thing to another, to another, to another, to another. And yeah, it's not to deny that we have lots of responsibilities in our lives, but there is a way to bring the heart into the equation. And all we need to do is, one, know that that's a real thing we can do. And two is, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? And what should I expect as a result? And so the number one tool that I brought into my life all those years ago, but bring into my clients' lives, is this breath practice called Heart Flow. It's a 33-second practice. I do have a download for this. So anybody who hears this and wants a copy of the Heart Flow practice, we'll probably link it to the show notes. But there's essentially 5 steps. So number one is you want to notice, what is one pattern that you know that you are right now currently triggered in your life? And just work with the one. You're not trying to fix them all. You just want to notice one. Maybe it's your reactivity to your kids in your morning routine. Maybe when you come home from the end of your long day, you're so exhausted, you don't have energy. Okay, so your brain's going to be doing certain things in these patterns. When you notice one, commit to practicing this breath practice 3 times or more for the next 3 days. And what you want is, in the moment that you notice that pattern, you're just going to stop and you're going to do this 33-second breath practice. Now, the practice itself is a rotation of 4 seconds in, 7 seconds out. And I know there's thousands of breath practices out there. I get it. This is one that I needed in my life to fit my busy life in the moments of life that I needed it. Not tomorrow morning when I meditate for 20 minutes. That's when I get to feel peaceful and calm. Awesome. But the brain and nervous system are interacting all day, every day. It does not stop. And so if you're relying on a meditation practice to be your solution, good luck. It's not going to be there. It's going to give you access to the feeling of what the parasympathetic nervous system feels like. But that's not going to bring it to you in the moment your kid's freaking out, or the moment you're craving the alcohol or the social media scroll. Those are the moments your brain has still got you locked. And so those are the moments you want to work with. So 33 seconds, you're doing a 4 in, 7 out, 4 in, 7 out, 4 in, 7 out, 3 times rotation. The idea behind this is you are building coherence in your vagus nerve. You're training your vagus nerve to teach your brain to let go of the trigger. And at the same time, it resets your nervous system back into the parasympathetic rest and digest state in 33 seconds. Now, this is the neuroscience and quantum physics side of this work, and it's a proven scientific method. This is based off of what's also called heart rate variability, HRV. Now, I put my hand on my heart as another one of the steps. I close my eyes if it's available. Obviously, if you're driving, don't do that. And I think of the thing I'm most grateful for in my life right now, just to bring the frequency of your nervous system into an energy of what you do want. This is a big step with my clients, that we know that we get very stuck in knowing what we don't like, trying to always fix. So you always have a frequency that's based off of needing to fix something. Well, and that's all you're going to manifest, is more things to fix. So when you're working with these moments that you're feeling triggered, creating this beautiful reset in 33 seconds, and you bring in the energy of what you do want, you start to notice how this builds a fresh energy for you to start to motivate from, and then take further inspired action next. But if you try and do all the action first before you do this work, it's just going to pile on a brain that's already locked into the stress patterns, and it's very difficult.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. That's super valuable. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. I realize that, I mean, that, like you said, that's something you teach your clients, and I feel just very, very grateful that you shared that here with us.
Well, I appreciate that. When I teach my kids, because I know how, my daughter's 11, my son's 9, and they're going through it. Our kids are, they have unlimited access, for the most part, unlimited access to processed food and screens. Their brains, our kids' brains, it's like giving kids access to unlimited cocaine. It's not meant to be this way for our children, to have this kind of access to such heavy dopamine-based experiences, cerebral experiences. Mm-hmm. And yet we don't have a huge population of parents who know how to help their children regulate their emotional experiences. It's not the words we say as parents. It's the energy of our nervous system that helps them to feel safe and feel loved. If we as parents don't know how to regulate our own response to the things that are happening in our lives, we're not really there for our kids in the ways that they need us.
Mm.
And so we know this because we can see it in their behavior. Their behavior, the dominant experience in my house, and it's not perfect in my house either. It is a constant experience of them wanting access to more screens and wanting access to more sugary based foods. And so I have to manage my reactivity to that. But at the same time that I bring my heart back online, creating an environment for them to understand, what are we doing here? What are we doing in this moment right now? I'm not saying no to you guys about wanting more screen going. I want us to create presence around that choice. So breathe with me. And they get it. They're on it. But then they, as we know, they still want the screens, they still want the sugar. But as long as we're bringing consciousness to those choices, they are empowered little human beings for as they grow older and they're navigating all the stressors of adulthood. It's all around building more presence to this moment, presence to this moment, presence to this moment, because then you get to play with your emotional state in a way where you're not locked into the past stickiness of it all, but you actually have room to explore into the emotions of how you want things to be.
Mm. I love it. I love it. I feel like that's a maybe a good place to stop for today. I hope that we can have you back. I know there's
Yeah.
more. There's more that you could share. What's the best way for people to connect with you and benefit from the work that you do?
Yeah, I would just head to the website clearimpact.io, clearimpact.io, and yeah, download whatever I have there for you to download and give it a try. And you can always reach out to me at adam@clearimpact.io. I'm happy to chat with anybody out there who resonates with this message.
Awesome. I'll have the links in the show notes. And would you mind sending me the one you mentioned, the heart flow
Yeah,
practice?
yeah,
I'll
will
make
do
sure that's linked there too. So
for sure.
awesome. Adam Hart, thanks so much for your time and for being here on the Begin Within Health show.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Appreciate it.
All right, I want to thank Adam once again for being here on the Begin Within Health show, and I have a link waiting for you in the show notes to his website, the one that he mentioned. If you haven't already checked it out, feel free to go there and grab some free resources from him and continue to work on making personal improvement, right? Unleashing your energy and moving in the direction that you want to move as you make the decisions that you want to make in the moments that matter the most. Now, a couple things that I want to draw attention to, things that are going to stick with me, and I hope they stick with you as well. And that is number one, first and foremost, is realizing the moments that we have the opportunity to train ourselves, taking advantage of those moments. And like we heard in the interview, those are the moments that might be the most difficult ones, right? When we feel the feelings that we don't want to feel, when we're inclined to do the thing that, the real us, the real me doesn't want to do, the thing that I've been doing repeatedly that I've been regretting that I'm doing. It's giving me the results that I don't want, right? In those moments, those are the trainable moments to our brain. So what I want you to do, and I want to encourage you to do, is think about what those moments are for you, especially in terms of health, right? What are the big opportunity moments? Perhaps when you're making decisions that later you wish you hadn't made. Where are you? What are you experiencing? What had you just been doing prior to it when you make that decision that later was less healthy than what you would have liked and you want to move in a better direction? Those are the moments that matter the most, the opportunities there to train your brain. I think that's such a powerful thing for all of us to stop and recognize. So what I want to encourage you to do is do that. Think about the brain trainable moment in your day-to-day routine. Where are those moments? And if you're not really sure, then really just open up your awareness to those moments in the future. Where are they? And just right now, just notice them, right? Just, oh, that was one of them. Now that I have this food in my mouth, or I just ate this, sugary thing, just to use the example that Adam used throughout the interview, um, take notice of those. Those are the opportunities. Those are beautiful opportunities, where we can train, we can grow when we do something positive in those moments, just like we heard. So he did a great job of explaining. Right, one thing that we could do, one thing that he's found works for him and his clients, to do that little breathing exercise. So go for it. 33 seconds. That's all it takes. And then finally, I want to just say this. I really appreciated that. He acknowledged that even though we pause in that moment, we still have a choice. We have a choice to make whatever decision we want after we make that pause. But getting that connection back online, getting out of that reactive place allows us to at least make a decision from a better place, right? Probably from a healthier place, a healthier frame of mind, and then we're more likely to make a healthier decision. Such a great conversation. Thanks so much for listening. If you haven't done so already, I would love for you to, especially if you're using Apple, to leave a review. You can tell me what you loved about this episode. I read those reviews. I absolutely love them. And I thank you so much for them, because they do help other people to find this show. When they do a search, they're more likely to find the Begin Within Health show, based on the number of reviews that we have. So those are so important to us in the podcasting world. Please leave a review if you haven't done so, and a rating if you're using some other podcast player. If you have the ability to review it, please do so. That's how they work. That's how they show shows to more potential listeners, and then we can help even more people in this challenging journey to improve our health. Thank you so much for listening. Keep taking good care of yourself. I'll talk to you again soon.